The proclamation of the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me." He replied to him, "Friend, who appointed me as your judge and arbitrator?" Then he said to the crowd, "Take care to guard against all greed, for though one may be rich, one's life does not consist of possessions." Then he told them a parable. There was a rich man whose land produced a bountiful harvest. He asked himself, "What shall I do? For I do not have space to store my harvest." And he said, "This is what I shall do. I shall tear down my barns and build larger ones. There I shall store all my grain and other goods, and I shall say to myself, 'Now as for you, you have so many good things stored up for many years. Rest, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this night your life will be demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, to whom will they belong?' Thus will it be for all who store up treasure for themselves, but are not rich in what matters to God." The Gospel of the Lord.
Review your values. Evaluate your values. As we have been stressing in the reflection on the first two readings, there are many values, important things. But what really lead us to life? What is the quality, the true meaning of life that we are seeking? And what values promote them? In the Gospel, someone approaches Jesus with a question or a request. "Please tell my brother to give me a share of our inheritance." You know, this request will appear later on again in a parable that Jesus will tell the Pharisees and the scribes. Remember the prodigal son who asked his father for a share of his inheritance. "I want to get what is due to me." And if it is an inheritance, well, just like in the first reading, the inheritance is really the fruit of the labor of the parents. But the son is already asking, "Let me have my share." Something that he had not really worked on. But, being a son, then I deserve it. And in the Gospel, it is the brother who is being asked to give a share of their inheritance to another brother. And Jesus says, "Well, who set me as the judge or the arbiter?" But instead of really settling the issue of the division of the inheritance, Jesus turned that into an occasion for teaching. And he says, avoid greed in all its forms. Greed. And he immediately says, after that, do not think that your possessions will guarantee you life. Jesus knows very well that some people think that by having many possessions, by accumulating so much possession, that they are already guaranteed life. What is the greed that Jesus is asking us to be cautious about, to avoid? That greed comes in the parable of the person who had a rich harvest, a very good harvest. So good that his stock room or maybe stock houses could not accommodate anymore the surplus of the harvest. So you can imagine, he has enough to sustain him. But then there is the extra, the surplus. Now what do? You already have what you need and that could sustain you. And then there is the surplus. Some of us might think, well, if I am already guaranteed my sustenance for a whole year, I will give the surplus to my neighbors. I will share it with the family. I will share it with the poor. But this person says, I will have a new barn. I will enlarge my barn so that the surplus will remain with me. Imagine, he is already guaranteed sustenance, but he just wants to hold on to something which he does not need. And instead of sharing, instead of facing, a certain diminution of the fruits of his labor, no, he would keep it and would rather spend for a bigger barn. Now, some of us might say, but he deserves it. He worked for it. Yes, that is a value. But let us review the value. Jesus says, just like in Kohelet, in the first reading, in this parable, God tells this man, oh yeah, okay, you keep all of this, but what if tonight you die? This is the lesson in greed. You put your trust, you put your life, you put the stability of your life only in what you possess. And so it becomes for you an insurance for living. That's why you don't want to let go of it. Whether you need it or not, I will hold on to it. Because for me, that guarantees me life. But Jesus says, as in the first reading, no, it is no guarantee. Your possessions will not make you live. And that is verifiable in our own experience. Rich or poor, they all die. Even the poor may die at a ripe old age, and some of the rich might die quite young. It is not a guarantee of life. The greed that makes me hold on to it because my life depends on it. Jesus says the antidote is be rich in the sight of God. Do what is important for God. Sharing, loving, thinking of your neighbors, living according to your means and what is sufficient. Do not destroy creation for your greed. Do not deprive other people because of your greed. You think you will live. No, that is not the most important type of life. True life is being like Christ, according to St. Paul, and giving of your life for others. When nothing is left in you because you have emptied yourself of everything, that's when you are rich in God's eyes. A revision of values. Today, we celebrate the memory of Saint Jean-Marie Vianney, the humble parish priest, the curé of the small town of Ars in France. Yeah, he could have used his priesthood. He could have used his connections in order to get the best position that would give him not only honor, but also remuneration. But he had only one desire: to serve the people, lead them to God as a simple country priest. He had lost his voice, but he continued preaching the Word of God through his presence. He had nothing, but he had everything. He was rich in the eyes of God. The Word has been exposed. Let us now fulfill it.